It's time to start the session. Please give a warm welcome to the speakers.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Hiroshi Kurokawa, and today we are giving a talk about code review. Is anyone doing code review? Raise your hand if you are doing code review as a part of your day job. Thank you. And I believe that we are doing code review probably several times every day. And of course, our code is reviewed as well. So in other words, that we are reviewers and reviewee at the same time. It is so common in the development process that we sometimes think we know well about code review. But I noticed that there are good code reviews and not so good ones. For example, a good code review gives us some considerate feedback and bring a great discussion to make the code and the product better, while others are like just pointing out typos or something like that. It's just good. But I think there are some techniques and tips and tricks to do a good code review. So today, we would like to share those techniques with you. Okay. And in the first part, I will explain a rather general stuff, like how to do a good code review. And in the second part, Nanao-san will share tips and tricks, especially for Android app code review. Okay, let's start. So before talking about code review, I'd like to give a brief definition, especially about what it is done for, because code review has many aspects. And when I just say code review, you might have a different perception than me. Someone might think it is for reading through the code and finding out some potential bugs, and others might think that it is for discussing specifications. To clarify what the code review is, I'm listing up what is not a code review is for. First, I think it is not for finding out a bug. Of course, sometimes we could find a potential bug, and that is just great. But it is not the goal of code review, I think. It is mostly done through testing. And second, it is not for code formatting or linting. Pointing out some warnings and formatting things is just great, which will anyway make the code better. But I think it's job of formatter or linter. Finally, it is not for discussing the specification. In general, it is good to fix the specification before starting code development. And sometimes you find some specification bug while you are coding or while you are reviewing the code. And it's great to have a discussion about the specification. But if you find that kind of bug of specification, do not do that in code review. Just involve a product owner and have a discussion with them, not on GitHub. So what code review is for? In my opinion, it is for sharing knowledge, sharing skills, and making a good product. In short, it is for collaboration. At first, probably you have no idea why the reviewee does this thing or that thing. But through the code review, you may have a kind of heart-to-heart exchanges with the reviewee and finally get his or her idea. And then you could give a feedback or suggestion on how to improve their code. And this is a collaboration. The reason why I use the word journey in the title of this talk is because it looks like a journey. You walk down the path the review went through, and you see what they saw, or you hear what they heard, and you will get what they thought about it. Sometimes you might find a better route, or you might be told what you would overlook without them. At last, you and your review get the goal. Until then, you'd have gained a deeper understanding on the problem you are solving, and I'm sure it will make your product better. Okay, so to go on this journey, you need some information. So I'm listing up some information you need to do code review. First of all, the goal is most important. What is the problem the projects try to solve? For what do we have to change our code? And next, there must be some context or background behind the change. Sometimes it's a bug reported by a user or a chat on Slack or discussion in person. Anyway, it must be a context for this change. And doing code review without knowing that background I think is like going through a tunnel without light. So it's important to know the background. Next, if the pull request is rather large, it's very valuable to know the strategy of the change. How the Reviewee tackle their problem. Just adding a patch to the existing component or building a custom component from scratch or something like that. And you should keep in mind that overall strategy of the change. And if you have any questions or concerns about it, just ask them. And of course, the project must contain some changes. It may be a list of commits, a sequence of commits, or the review is well experienced. They might add some description about what they have made. And lastly, although not so many people include this information in their pull request, I think to understand how to verify that change works well is important. How you can be sure that the change solves the problem and doesn't cause any bad side effects. Just for your reference, here is a template I'm using for pull request. On the top, there is a background and a goal section. And here, I'm just saying this change is for fixing a bug reported by a user. Below that, there is a strategy I took. And in this section, I'm describing to make some operation asynchronous to solve the problem. And in the changes section, I listed the more detailed changes. For example, which method I changed and what kind of refactoring I made or something like that. Finally, I put verification steps to make sure this change works as expected. Okay, next I'm sharing some my best practices to do a code review step by step. And here I'm using an analogy for the code review process, a journey. So code review is, as I said earlier, is like a journey. You are handed over a map with a route on it, and you walk down to the goal following that route. And verify the route is good one. Yeah. So first, when you have a map, what do you do? Yes, find the goal. And do not forget asking about the background, as I mentioned earlier. Why do I have to get there? what problem do I want to solve? If you start working without knowing that what the problem is, I'm sure you can't tell whether the route is good or bad. Okay. The next thing is go through the strategy. Of course, you do not need to check the details, but it is always valuable to have a rough idea on how the route is. For example, does the route is shortest but hard, or longer but easy path, or it's avoiding a mountain clockwise or counterclockwise, and so on. Okay. For example, I once reviewed a pull request and noticed a standard widget can be used with a few modifications to achieve the goal, instead of building a custom widget from scratch. I gave that feedback to the Reviewee, and we had a discussion, and finally agreed upon that we should use a standard widget. Also, he had to remove most part of his code, but we did not need to waste time on the custom widget to be removed at last. So read the description and the strategy before looking into each changes, and give a feedback if necessary. Okay, now you can start working. And here is my advice. Before looking into each changes, verify that code really works. I have some experiences that the code just doesn't compile, or if you run the app, it instantly crashes. So it might take some time, but it doesn't take much time. So check out the code base and compile it and run the app to make sure it actually works. And if you know how to verify the changes, just verify it works. So in addition to that, seeing an actual running app may give you some inspirations, such as what if the network goes offline while doing this operation, or what if the previous activity is destroyed now, or something like that. So if you review the change while keeping these kind of points in mind, it will make your review more thoughtful. Okay, now is the time to look into changes in detail. I'm not describing techniques about how to review each change. That part will be covered later in this talk. But one thing to note here is that the rule of thumb is to think and feel as a Reviewee does. As a proverb says, walk in his moccasins. You already know the background, the goal, and the strategy of the journey. This means that you are more likely to be able to understand why each change is made and why he or she takes this option, not that option. This is the very heart of the code review. Through this process, you could share knowledge and skills with the Reviewee more efficiently. Okay, now you have finished the code review and reached the goal. Is your job done? Wait a second. Do not jump the gun. It is time to look back on your review. When you look back on the path from the goal, then it might look something different. In the beginning of the code review, a change sometimes seems odd. You don't get why the Reviewee does this change. But pressing it in the entire route, it might get other meaning. So if you find one of your comments is off the point, do not hesitate to take it back. And note, if you find that change is awesome, just say that. Review is not pointing out concern or potential bug. If you feel it is good, just express that. Okay, now review is finally done. Lastly, give your feedback to the review and have a discussion on that. I believe after walking through the route with his or her moccasins, it is rather easy to have an efficient communication with the review. You know his or her pain, why, how, and fact he or she has made. This is a collaboration. Hope you guys now have a better idea on how to collaborate with the review to make the code review journey more efficient and help you do a good review. The first part of the talk is done. Now I will switch to Nanao-san.
Okay. So I'm gonna dig a little deeper into each process from one. First process is understanding the background and the goal. First of all, let's check if the content was written using template. If Reviewee doesn't use template or there is something you don't know, you don't understand, don't hesitate to ask Reviewee. Someone may feel it's too bother to write details using the template, but it's very helpful for reviewer because of the reviewer can feel free to review it with detailed information. On another note, we recently checked pull requests left not reviewed in stand-up meeting every morning. Also, that's good to reduce pull requests not reviewed. Oh, I forgot the step. Next process, check the strategy and what was made. After you read the description and understand the goal, please think about if the solution fits the reviewee choose is correct. If you feel it's a little weird, it's good to ask the reviewee why she or he choose the strategy. You may find a hidden background. Next, if you agree with the strategy, let's run it actually following verification steps in the description. To avoid wasting time, we usually do operational check before code review. Sometimes the Gradle builds fail after checking out a branch which has changes about build Gradle or data binding. So we use the git walkthrough command. The walkthrough command enables checkout the branch on another directory. Using a different directory helps make the build stable. After adding walkthrough, let's build the app. Then have a look at build log and logcat. Changes related to build settings makes sometimes a big issue. Keep in mind to find troublesome problems as early as possible. And program 2, if there are changes about program rules or build variants, try build with corresponding build variants too. Next, this is a long process. Let's look into every changes one by one, check how the app works. If there are changes about UI, check the UI carefully. Unfortunately, everyone is not always familiar with material design or Android way. So we need to check if it's done the Android way. If you want to watch the animation carefully, the change animation scale in developer options is helpful. And if the changes about the cycler view or list of images, check if those are reused objects or using cache properly. Next is more troublesome. Only showing data is not everything. We should handle various errors or empty state. Check how it works when the response from API was unexpected. And to check handling errors, we may need to add some changes directly or use some setting of emulator to debug like airplane mode. Even if the data is displayed normally, we should check if those handling works. Yes, life cycle, this is the biggest and unavoidable topic. We need to check a lot of things. Check the state of on pause and on resume, on start, on stop, on destroy, and on create. And pay attention to subscription or closable. And the state of fragment or activity 2. Anyway, imagine what you don't want user to do. Just do it. Next, performance. For users, working fast, saving battery, and no crashes are very important. Take care of dealing with complex data or background process. If you feel it's slow, you should measure the time to interactive. Finally, let's read the code. First, it's obvious thing, use Android Studio so that we can read relevant code too. Also, second is obvious. Don't hesitate to ask. The last one is a little difficult to practice. Code is which became necessary with changes are not easy to find. And reviewing layout XML is painful, but we had better watch layout carefully because sometimes unnecessary stuff is left after changing. If you have any concern, change code and check how it works. If you find duplicated components like % layout, think about replace them or create another issue. And discussing code format makes us exhausted. We had better share settings about coding style or inspection rule in repository. Save your time with automation. Adding those settings to Git ignore as below is helpful. When new library is added, check if it's trustworthy, maintained well, and there are better alternatives. If you don't know the new library, just read the document and source code. Then you may find better classes or methods. Also, next topic is big one. We don't have to be always sensitive about memory leak, but it's good to have a look at profiler when you have any concern. For example, strong references to activity and forgetting closable stuff. The easiest way to find leaks is to repeat screen transition, next and return, next and return, watching memory profiler. In the memory usage, if the memory usage increases, that's a leak. And next is big one. But what I want to talk about tests is very simple. Good code is very easy to test. In our team, the test coverage is not so high, and limited to only unit test for model, build model, and simple utilities. There are no end-to-end tests. So I don't reject a pull request only because no tests are added. If it's enough good to add tests later, it's fine, I guess. If not, I will request adding tests. Anyway, generally, it's often hard to add tests later, so we had better write tests as early as possible. Next, it's a kind of off topic, but I introduced some side effects in Android dev. If you add a new dangerous permission to the Android manifest, auto update will be disabled. So check if it's really necessary. And the second is actual failure feature made, the biggest failure. And can you imagine what happened if you move application class? Users couldn't launch app from shortcut on home screen because the entity of shortcut is a kind of bookmark for the intent of former package name. So take care. Then code reading is almost done. Next, we look back on the changes from the goal. In the end of code reading, you may have different impression from the beginning. Let's organize your thoughts to give you feedback and imagine what you would do if you were the reviewee. If there is any issue, don't forget to prioritize each issue. It makes easier to talk about the issues. The last process is a feedback. Let's have a conversation with the reviewee. Values, this is a little abstract. Before discussing about code, we should share common values in team. What does spark joy? Do you know Komari? I'm sorry. In our team, elegance of architecture doesn't matter. Easy and simple way is the best. Because releases of Android platform or libraries which we use is very frequent. We need to update them as early as possible. So we focus on how it's easy to change, fix, and add new features. And to develop faster, also package names should be proper. And this is off topics, but many Japanese programmers are not good at English, so naming is actually one of the most difficult process in programming. Then, this is the final step. If you think some changes are necessary, feedback your suggestion as detailed as possible. Don't forget to specify whether pull requests can be merged. And even if you feel the code is good, it's okay. Don't hesitate to give compliments. That helps you to be positive, to communicate to each other. Building good team culture is more important than anything else. Okay, that's all. We are happy if you can get some hints from our talk. We will be in exhibition room for office hours, so please visit us. We'd love to know how you do code review, so why don't we exchange knowledge about code review? Thank you for very much. Thank you for listening very much.
Thank you for the talk.